Welcome to WLNM, the web novel and manga review, hosted by Zeke Changuris.
Welcome to WLNM, the web light novel and manga review. We are dedicated to bringing our listeners the very special artists and writers and creators that are part of the current explosion of creativity, giving us stories to entertain and inspire us. We'd like to welcome Koji Kojou, the author of original English light novels, Everything is Cancelled, Our Bittersweet Electric Life, Do You Want to Be Normal, Holographic Hearts, In Search of Beautiful Fantasy World of Our Dreams, Maybe We'll Find It Someday. Welcome to the podcast. Let's just start off. You said that a lot of your themes have to do with an internet-obsessed culture, and considering that's how we're accessing everything nowadays, what do you mean internet-obsessed?
Well, if you're going to be writing a novel that's based in current day, like a general like slice of life kind of novel, you're going to have to include things, involving the internet, because nowadays everyone puts their life on the internet. It's all about social media and everything. Like when I was growing up, people didn't usually put their personal stuff on the internet. It was used as people use like chats and stuff, and are generally warned about putting too many personal details on the internet. But nowadays it's like everybody has their entire life on there.
Okay.
It leads to a lot of different problems and kind of different social dynamics. So it's something you have to take into account generally.
But you're just taking it into account. You're not making it a parable of internet safety.
That's not really what I set out to do. I mean, maybe I touch upon that generally, like maybe some comments. I didn't go about it to make a parable per se. I more wanted to just make some stories, some entertaining stories that were kind of set in like this kind of weird modern day social dynamic that we currently see ourselves in.
Okay. I can't help but think about it because what I do teach is technology in high school, and the amount of information my students are willing to share publicly is astounding to me. So yeah, I understand if you're going to write a novel that has to do with modern day, everyday slice of life, that you're going to need to include that because it is omnipresent in our lives.
Yeah, for sure.
So what got you started as a writer? Were you always a storyteller, or was this something that you came to later?
I always enjoyed writing. Like when I was in school, I always liked doing like creative writing assignments more than all the other ones, and I liked reading a lot. But I think the main thing that discouraged me from actually becoming a writer or anything like that be the idea of having to go through publishers and having to try and please other people just to have my books published and everything. So, but when I kind of realized that modern technology basically allowed me to do whatever I wanted and just put whatever I want out to people, that kind of made me really excited. So a few years ago, I think maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I just decided to kind of go ahead and give it a shot and put some of my stuff out there. And I just really enjoyed it. But yeah, I guess the answer would be I did always enjoy writing.
Hey, I find a lot of people who I've interviewed over the years who are writers really do enjoy that. Really are a part of that group of us that have always been creative and always have had stories to tell. And the fact that we've lowered some of the barriers to entry into the publishing market has, to me, been one of the greatest things of the last 10, 15 years. Because if you have a story, you have the chance to put it out there. What types of stories did you start to write with? Did you cut your teeth on fanfic? Did you go straight into I'm going to write something original right off the bat? What was your entry level into the writing world?
I have some interesting kind of examples for that. When I was in high school, I was into horror. I was really into horror, and I liked H.P. Lovecraft. So I kind of tried to mimic him when writing my first original stories. But I also did write some fanfics. Like I wrote some kind of movie script. I wrote like a screenplay. I didn't know how to format a screenplay back then, but that didn't stop me from writing something. And I wrote like a Freddy versus Jason versus Hellraiser script, which it turned out pretty bad. I think if it was made into an actual movie, probably wouldn't be very good. Probably be something of a viewing hazard. But I kind of just filed that away. I didn't really do anything with it other than show it to a few of my friends and my parents, who were like, "Oh, that's nice. That's nice." Then me and my brother actually made like this crudely animated Dragon Ball Z fan cartoon. we animated in Microsoft Paint, and it was like the Dragon Ball Z characters living just like their home lives, their personal lives. Like the first episode was Vegeta's birthday party, and the whole theme was like he was really cranky and they were all trying to make him happy, but he was just being a spoiled brat and being mad that his birthday party wasn't turning out how he wanted it to. And we were like big fans of like Adult Swim and like Aqua Teen Hunger Force and stuff back since middle school and everything. So we tried to like imitate that kind of style of humor and things like that. So I kind of did fan fiction in a really roundabout way.
Hey, I constantly tell this to my students, and if somebody is listening to this would make the 8th or 9th podcast at this point, they would have heard me say that, hey, I use fanfic. It's nothing more than it's a prompt. When your teacher gave you a prompt in school and gave you a story and a setting, and told you to write about something, that's what fan fiction is. You're given characters, you're given a setting, and then you use your own imagination to figure out where it's going to go. So I find it a completely legitimate form of creative expression.
Yeah, for sure. And if you can use like a universe that someone else has already created, it takes a lot of the heavy lifting and kind of like the more intimidating factors of writing out of the equation, and kind of gives you free reign to do whatever you want with these kind of props.
Yeah, it really is a way that lends itself to you being creative without having to worry about how character development, for one, is very difficult for a lot of people. World building can be extremely difficult. So what's the difference between setting something in a world that somebody else made up and setting something in real life? Because isn't real life just a prompt for the great American novel?
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, all those great American novels that take place in the modern day or whatever. So isn't reality just a prompt? I think I should create a meme or something on that one. So what inspires you to write? What keeps you moving now?
Oh, that's kind of an interesting question. I'm not sure. I one of the things that kind of pushes me to write things is if I get like a really amusing idea in my head. Like if I'm like maybe talking with someone and I say, "Hey, wouldn't it be funny if like there was a story about this or something like that?" Or like maybe we're coming up with different jokey scenarios, and I don't know. If something makes me laugh or just really amuses me, I kind of want to see through with it and actually write it.
Yeah,
I'm not sure. That might be a strange way to go about it.
Hey, my wife has waterproof paper that's on a notepad in the shower because she gets ideas for different things she markets as part of her job. And she knows the moment she steps out of the shower, she'll forget. So she has a waterproof pad in the shower just to jot down those ideas. So if talking about a story with one of your friends is what gets your juices flowing, I mean, there's no problem there.
Yeah. Like a lot of the scenarios in Everything is Canceled were from a conversation I had with my brother, where I told him about, like, hey, I have this idea for a story, and then we're like, oh, well, what if one character does this, and what if they do this, and what if we have a character based off of this internet personality that comes in?
Yeah,
and so that kind of helped me refine the idea in my head.
And there are plenty of personalities, using air quotes, on the internet to choose from.
Yeah, for sure. There's no lack of inspiration there.
No, there is not. So, what is your favorite universe that you've created, or have you been trying to set everything in the same?
Yeah, I generally like I'll actually put mentions of other books, of other characters and stuff that I have in my other books, in the books that I'm currently writing. And I like one of my friends, my fellow writer, Chad. I think you interviewed him.
Yes.
Already, but he actually told me that I'm like the Kevin Smith of light novels, of English light novels, because like, you know, Kevin Smith, all his stories are basically in the same universe, and they deal with, like, you know, this kind of slice of life, modern themes and everything like that. Yeah, it's very similar to that.
Yeah, that's a great way to think about it, and I love it when writers and creators do that. I mean, a lot of people didn't realize until they were hit over the head with it in Weathering with You that the Garden of Words, Your Name, and Weathering with You were all the same universe. So I really appreciate when writers find a way to expand on the worlds that they've created, even if it's not the same story. It lets you know that, you know, this world that you're creating has a lot more thought into it than just a cardboard cutout set that you set behind your characters.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it is just for my own amusement. Like, I'll put in, like, characters from a different story I wrote and just be like, ha, yeah, I did that thing. It's not. I barely even think about the readers. Like, maybe people are reading it and be like, who the heck is this character? Why should I care? But I don't know. It is mostly for my own amusement.
Hey, whatever keeps us motivated. Because
exactly.
Writing a story to completion is an amazing feat. Do you ever have issues with that completion? Do you have false starts and you just have to abandon it because you just don't know where to go?
Yeah, I'm sure I'm very similar to a lot of other novelists, where I just have like a huge graveyard, ever expanding graveyard of unfinished stories, just kind of sitting in my database.
Yeah, I can attest to that. I've only completed writing 3 novels in my life, and I've started numerous other stories and just couldn't find a place for them to go. So yes, that sounds a very, very familiar.
I've actually my first novel that I created, I had it all the way written. All I had to do was I had to finish editing it and formatting it, everything, and I couldn't bring myself to do it because I just didn't think it was good enough. So I do have like a completely unfinished novel just sitting there, just because after I got finished with it, I just kind of thought, no, never mind.
Okay, who out of your plethora of characters, who did you find the most enjoyable to write?
Oh man, that's a good question. There's a few that I really liked writing. Like one of them was Alyssa from Do You Want to Be Normal? For her, it was one of these characters that I kind of had a general idea of what I wanted to do, but she wasn't fully fleshed out until I started writing her, and the character kind of took on a life of its own. I really liked that about her. My favorite is probably and maybe Angela from Our Bittersweet Electric Life, and then I brought her back in Everything Is Canceled. It's like very small girl who has anger issues, and she plays video games online. Her personality, I mentioned this to Chad actually, and he didn't realize it when he was reading, I guess. She was actually based off of Dark Side Phil. He was like an infamous Let's Player
Okay.
on YouTube. So when I write her mannerisms and like her speech patterns and everything are actually, I kind of imagine Dark Side Phil's speech patterns in my head when I'm writing for her. So, but he's like this big like he's like an overweight middle-aged guy, and then I'm writing this like kind of small, petite, delicate-looking girl who's all acting the same way that he would. In my head, that's just really really amusing to me.
That's a great juxtaposition.
Yeah, and I also like O'Shaughnessy from Do You Want to Be Normal? It's a very similar principle, where it's like this like cute small girl, but she acts like a hard-boiled New York detective.
That's a very. I'm putting that image in my head right now, and it's what's making me chuckle. Is this? Yeah, there. I have an older sister who is about 5 foot tall. Yeah, and I have been taller than her since middle school. So yeah, I can. I'm imagining these small petite gals carrying big attitudes.
If you could come up with like a character whose appearance is in complete opposition to their personality, I think that always makes for a really interesting character to try and write.
Do you have trouble sometimes when you write into a dead end? You're like, okay, where do I go? Or you feel like you've gotten to the end of the story, but well, it's not going to be really a story unless I add another 20 pages.
Well, I that happened to me with my first self-published novel. It was called my stepsister knows my biggest secret, and she wants to tell everyone.
Okay.
I kind of unpublished that story because it's not very good, and I don't want people like reading that and be like, "Oh, this guy stinks." One of the reasons it wasn't very good was because should have been the climax of the story happens at about the halfway mark.
Okay.
And so everything after that it felt really forced. Like, the whole story was just really undercooked. I mean, that makes sense. It was the second long form book that I wrote, second long form story that I wrote. So it was obviously going to be very rough. But I've tried very hard not to make that mistake again in like the novels that I wrote afterwards. So hopefully it doesn't happen.
Yeah. Hey, we're all guilty of that at times, where sometimes you just have to let it naturally end where it ends instead of pushing it along. I mean, because think about it, next time you get to that point, you can be like, okay, it's a good story up until this point, and it naturally should end. Then finish it, don't necessarily publish it, start another story. So if you get a collection of 2 or 3, you can release them at the same time as a collection of short stories, like those erudite authors do.
Yeah. I mean, with that novel that I wrote, though, I think it definitely could have been expanded out into a full-length story if I had just been more patient with it and tried to like refine it a bit more. I think I'm gonna just look at it as like a lost opportunity. Hey,
Great Gatsby is about, I think, 70,000 words or something like that. So, Fitzgerald made his mark with a very short story.
Wasn't that the book about there's like a bunch of people who get drunk and then they like hit each other with cars and stuff?
Yes. Yep.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, I remember that one.
Yeah. The most recent film version of it had Leonardo DiCaprio in it. One of the best versions had Robert Redford in it. So it's a great story. It's one of my favorites, but it's a very short story, and he didn't need to stuff another 100 pages in there. He told the story he wanted to tell, and he was done. And it's one of the things I can respect about a writer is when they know that when they've told me everything they want to tell me, and they haven't like stuffed it with extra stuff just to increase the length or the sellability. You're your storyteller. Stick to the story, and everything will eventually work out. If it's a great story, people are going to love it, whether it's longer or it's, whether it's 20 pages or 2,000 pages. If it's a great story, people are going to love it, regardless of length. So
yeah, I would agree with that. I think the length should serve the story and not really the other way around.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Tolkien didn't start out thinking, yeah, this is going to be a 3-parter. He just started telling a story and he couldn't stop. So, do you do a lot?
It's like how George R.R. Martin starts telling a story, and then he was like, yeah, this is going to be a few books long, and then it turns out to be like 50 books.
Yes.
He'll never finish.
He'll never finish. Fortunately, HBO did that for us.
Sadly.
Are you one of those people who writes a lot of drafts, or are you very intent on editing every word as you go?
I try to edit as much as possible when I go, but I usually end up with, maybe a half dozen drafts in total by the time I'm done, with varying degrees of edits. Like maybe I'll remove a section, maybe I'll expand a section. Maybe I just go through and make a few more tweaks to the grammar and spelling and whatnot.
All right. One of my favorite questions to ask writers, because this is one of those things that's amazing about the writing process. Have you ever written something that has caught you by surprise?
Yeah, I would say I've written things that have caught me by surprise, in that like I mentioned earlier, characters kind of taking on a life of their own.
Yes.
Sometimes you kind of become surprised at how much you enjoy writing a character, how much you just enjoy the character in general. Other times it's the opposite. Maybe you find out that you don't actually like a character all that much. I think when I was writing Everything Is Canceled, like about halfway through the book, I was thinking to myself, like, the protagonist of the story, Eddie, I thought, like, I don't really like this guy that much. But he was the kind of character that the story needed to have. So, he was an appropriate character, and I think the story worked out well with him in it. But me and Eddie probably wouldn't really get along in real life. Very serious guy. He kind of acts selflessly to help people he knows won't reciprocate, and then he gets kind of bitter about it. He's just he has like a generally unpleasant air about him. But yeah, so that kind of surprised me about it. But like I said, it is very appropriate for the story.
Well, it seems like you're big on character creation, and you can flesh these characters out a lot. Is that what you would consider your specialty? Is character-driven stories, or are you very good at writing action? What would you say your strong suit is?
Definitely, yeah, character-driven stuff. I really like writing dialogue between characters and kind of putting myself in the characters' heads and trying to imagine what they would do or say in certain scenarios. I haven't written a lot of action, but I think in my current work in progress, if I end up finishing it, I think this one's going to have a bit more action, but maybe not in the way people expect.
So, are you talking action like shonen, or action as in how you doing? Boom chicka wow wow proceeds in the background.
I'll just say it's more in line with like a sports series.
Okay, all right, yeah, because we all know a wonderful writer who can write 10-page sex scenes, and it looks it can make you blush on a regular basis.
Hey, I respect that.
So what authors? What authors do you admire? Who do you look to for inspiration at times?
I mean, I get a lot of my ideas from like anime, as you would guess. My my pen name, Koji Kojou, actually inspired by there's a light novelist named Wataru, like did like a series that Oregairu series.
Yes.
And he's pretty interesting. He has had, and you can tell he puts a lot of himself in like his protagonist character. And he did I remember I read first volume for the series A Sister Is All You Need, and he did like they asked a bunch of other light novelists to say some kind words about the series, like near the end of it. They like kind of wrote. They were like, "Hey, can you write like 100 words about why you like this book?" And he ended up writing like an entire page instead. I guess he thought they said 1,000 words instead of 100. And he just kind of like goes on a rant about how other light novelists don't invite him out to drink or to parties or anything, even though he probably wouldn't go anyway. He'd still appreciate it if they talked to him, and how they get to write novels for a living, but he does it part-time, and he's just kind of grumpy about that. But yeah, he seems like a really interesting kind of guy.
Hey, yeah, keep going.
Also, I used to be really into Douglas Adams when I was like in high school. I really like kind of like humorous stories and things like that. I think that definitely had an influence on me.
My biggest issue with Douglas Adams, I found the structure of his sentences to be long and distracting. Like, if that's the way...
I would say he's a long and distracting man.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I remember when I first... I made more than one attempt to read Hitchhikers. And I just started like turning my head to the side, thinking, what exactly is he saying?
I mean, one of the things about his books is he just injects so much of his own personality into them.
Yes.
They're kind of inseparable for the man himself.
So what has become, you mentioned that you liked Manga Sensei or Garu. What anime or light novel series is kind of one of your go-tos, one of your favorites?
Well, I mentioned A Sister Is All You Need earlier.
I love that one.
I watched through the entire anime of that one, and I'm currently I just read the first 2 volumes of that light novel series. But I'll be reading more of that. It's very good so far.
And it isn't how he spends his time, how a lot of writers spend their time, sitting around drinking and BSing.
Yeah. I'd say it's pretty accurate to that. And as Wataru said in his like little review of the book, it's very accurate if you take out all the cute girls. But also, yeah, Manga Sensei I really like. I know that series gets a lot of flack, but I thought it was really like a real fun kind of character-driven story, which is, as you could expect, is the kind of stuff I like. And the funny thing about that series is actually when I took a trip to Japan like 3 or 4 years ago, but it was like the same year that show came out. And if you were walking around Akihabara, the theme song was playing everywhere in every store you went into. It was huge. Hey. They had advertisements and flyers for it everywhere.
I was a big Elf fan. Oh
yeah, she was great.
I loved her, and I loved that. She was one of those last minute kind of writers. She only worked on a deadline.
Yeah.
Like, put it off, and then I got 24 hours to write 5,000 words. Okay, that's when I'll actually work. Yeah, I really loved her personality, and the ringlets were pretty good too.
I think like her and Elephant Sagiri were they're both of their personalities were so like big and interesting. Like it's not. There's no surprise that there's still arguments between fans of both of them even to this day.
Yeah. It really is, and I do have a penchant for watching the harem anime, so it was right.
Nothing wrong with that.
It was right in my wheelhouse. The yeah can't though I have been in I have been the harem protagonist, and in that I worked in a newsroom for years where I was basically one guy, and the rest of the reporters were women, and it made for some very interesting situations. So unfortunately, only one of them wanted to date me and eventually married me, so that's great. But
a happy ending.
Yeah, you still do all the hard work though. Can you come over and put up some bookshelves for me? Sure.
I can imagine.
Yeah, but women, I love them to pieces. I've always had the most friendships with women, and I love them. But they are crazy as can be. But I love them for that craziness, and there's all my best friends have always been women, and they know I love them, but I do think they're nuts, and most of them admit it.
Yeah, I've had a lot of female friends too. I guess you could say I've been in kind of I was put in kind of a zone of friendship,
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, nothing like being that guy. So close yet so far.
Yeah, he's like really good to talk to. I really enjoy spending time with him. Yeah, he's a great friend. And that was me.
Yeah, definitely been there. So, anything you're watching this season that you're interested in?
I'd love to watch anime, but the past 5 months of my life has been some of the busiest that I've ever lived through. It's been very difficult to find time for that. I have, however, been watching a little bit of Terrace House with my girlfriend, so that's always nice. I love Terrace House.
Yeah, the an
anime, but
yeah, I know what you
Japanese,
mean.
so I'm going to throw that out there.
The anything you want to promote? Any upcoming release that you're ready to talk about, or anything you want to whet our appetite for?
I wish I could talk about my current work in progress, but it's just not close enough to being finished to actually talk about it. Like if I talk about it too much, then I'll just not want to finish it.
You don't want to jinx
That's
yourself.
That's how it goes. Yeah, exactly. So I'm not going to talk about it too much. But I guess, there is he and Chad are working on kind of what he calls his secret internet project. So I've been kind of working with him a little bit on that, and it'll be ready to reveal soon enough. Once again, I'm not going to give out too many details.
Okay.
But just stay tuned because I'll be talking about that on my Twitter.
Okay. Your Twitter, which is
at Koji Kojou.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And we can find your books on Amazon.com, right?
Yep, that's correct. And I just put up a YouTube playlist of my favorite train cabin view videos. So if you guys like train videos, I'm kind of going through YouTube and collecting my favorites, so you can check that out.
Hey, nothing makes me happier than the detail that they put into trains in anime. You notice how much detail they put into those things when they draw them? It's spectacular. Watch Rail Wars. Yeah. There you go. Not only is it a harem, it's an adventure, and it has to do with trains. So
sounds fantastic. And yeah, the Japanese do love their trains.
Oh my God,
so
yeah.
It makes sense.
Well,
understandably so.
Okay. Well, thank you for joining me today. And as I say at the end of every broadcast, I really think that this is an exciting age because the barriers for people to tell their stories to a wide audience have been lowered, allowing this creativity explosion to happen. So all of us can share our stories and read some of the most fascinating works by authors that we never would have heard of before because this industry is a tough one. But thanks to the lowering of the barriers, we are able to see these wonderful works and read them. I hope if you enjoyed this, please subscribe to WLNM, where we hope to continue to highlight the best that the independent creators have to offer. And until next time, keep reading.
This has been a WLNM podcast.